I'm Philip Alderston. I am a real estate investor and apartment owner in Philadelphia. I don't know how much I can comment on the spiritual side, unfortunately, of my limited wealth, probably more than a third of it is invested in real estate. But I wanted to introduce our two speakers here. Michael Karp is really a kind of legendary entrepreneur who started in University City before there was University City, and has done, in addition to real estate, a myriad of other projects, including, and we'll hear about it later, but including cable and internet ventures and probably a lot of other stuff I don't even know about. Stephen Gartner is the president of Metro Commercial. Known Stephen for a very long time. He's one of the region's foremost retail gurus. Metro Commercial is one of the largest retail brokerages and shopping center managers in the Delaware Valley. So we're very happy to have Stephen with us today. I thought, probably what would be most fitting is if we could open it up just to have him say a couple words quickly, maybe for a few minutes, and then I have my own kind of bag of tricks for them that they're going to have to deal with after that. All right, so Michael first.
Just out of curiosity, because I have nothing prepared, so I can go any direction. Is there any kind of a sense of what you guys would like to have me tell you about? Does anybody have anything that they're curious about or any direction? What would you like to hear about?
Where do you think the development's going to be going? Like, what do you see for Center City as far as where the next big areas are?
Well, I personally see that movement into Center City continuing residentially with people living there. I think from that flows more jobs, more activity. One of the things that killed, in my perspective, residential in Philadelphia was the killing of the schools. And we had busing. The school busing changed our neighborhoods, moved people out of the city. And we had a situation where if you lived in the Center City area, there was no school you could send your kids to because you had to be bused all over. And the lack of quality education forced people to say, I have to pay for tuition at a private school. So many people in that middle-income area, and a pretty expanded middle-income area, had to leave because of the cost of school and quality of school. With the charter schools coming into town, and you're going to have eventually more and more charters, it's inevitable, you're going to have quality school options that you can have for free. I think that's going to bring more people in the middle to stay in Center City as opposed to going elsewhere. I think there's so many restaurants, so much action, that you're going to have more and more young Jewish families who would traditionally move out to the burbs, who are going to be living here. They're going to keep their kids in daycare here. And when the kids, so one of the things is having good daycare programs, but I think that gradually we'll see a gradual increase in resi in Center City. And I think that when that Center City, expands Center City area. And I think that's a whole, so one of the questions like what happens on the main line? Are we going to see less people moving out there, a decline in prices? But we see Center City growing with young families who stay here. The key is, I think, the schools. I think having more charters is going to be a big factor in that. Does that answer your question?
I was wondering about what you thought was the next hot neighborhood.
Well, you look at the ring all around Center City, and you're seeing it. It used to be that Washington Avenue was a boundary, and then you see some people living now even south of it. It's almost all developed down. South Street used to be a boundary, and you go down Graduate Hospital, you go south. So that area keeps expanding down, and you're seeing people crossing over Washington Avenue, like around the Italian Market area. You go south of there. There are people 2-3 blocks south. So it's an expansion. It's not an even expansion. But, and there's certain risk factors depending on where you live, but you're seeing that boundary push. Girard Avenue used to be 10, 12, 13 years ago before Bart built a job. Girard Avenue was no man's land. Today people are living north of Girard Avenue. I mean, so you're seeing that boundary keeping getting pushed. It's a question of just as an investor, having little pockets and tightly managing your property and being on top of what you're doing, buying it. But geographically, I mean, it's block by block. It's block by block where you're going to buy, but we're seeing stuff continuing growing that margin. And you look between here and Temple University, and you say, what's going to happen? Will it be residential and relatively safe all the way up to Temple? That's a stretch, but someday it may happen. But there'll be corridors. There are corridors, there are areas. You know, does that answer your?
Yeah.
You see, like companies like Comcast are building another tower down the street. You see, like other companies are, looking to come to Philadelphia and do large investments rather than going to New York. Or...
No, Philadelphia. So we have a cable company. We're based in Florida and Georgia, and we're going to go into Texas. Pennsylvania and Philadelphia are very tough places to do business. I've said to council people, we're putting 99% of my money is invested outside of Pennsylvania. And people will say, I've said to council people, I want to invest in, they say it's the taxes that are the killer. I said the taxes are a problem, but you in council are a worse problem because you're unpredictable. We don't know what laws you're going to pass arbitrarily that are going to make it a pain in the neck for us to do business for no economic gain because you've got 200 people lobbied you and you say, oh, in the next election I'll pick up 200 votes. So some could be whether it's lead abatement like the lead law. I waste so much time when we had that lead bill about, was it 2 years ago? And you go down, you speak to the people, you say, we already have federal laws about lead in paint on the wall. It's so regulated, and now you're going to have more laws for no reason. And there really was no need for additional regulation on that. And you get down to the number of people who are really affected, such a couple of zip codes, and it's mostly PHA tenants. So why are you doing stuff? And they're exempted. So most of the people that you've been, it was insane, but it's all politics. I wasted so much time on that, but that was something I said, I've got to do it. But that's our kill. I mean, you don't have statewide franchising for cable. I'm statewide franchise Georgia, statewide franchise Florida. In Pennsylvania, it's township by township. You go in the city of Philadelphia, do the whole city or nothing. Okay, we'll do nothing, goodbye. It's really, I don't want to say the R word, but it's stupid. I did say it's stupid how things are done. So why would a business come in and deal with all of that kind of stuff? Then you got the union issue. The union issue, we all know what that issue is. Just an indictment yesterday of the iron workers for, thank goodness after all these years. My guys used to carry guns when they did roofing jobs, guns. They had it, of course they carry. I mean, imagine you got to go and carry a gun when you're going to do work up on a roof somewhere. So if someone comes up there, you say, okay, okay. So, no, it's true. It's true. It's a crazy world. But that's the kind of thing, and then you get into the whole mentality here. Would you have an educated workforce? So the city should be under Rendell. We had Herbie Viederman was like, at least you go to Herb and you say, Herb, my business has a problem. How can I make it grow? Today, it's not a business-friendly city. Sporadically, you can have things done, but there's no organized method to it. But on and on. It's a very challenging environment to deal in, and in Philadelphia, like there are restaurants. It's an interesting place to live. Okay, fast. I got 2 kids. Phil knows them slightly, I think is a good way to put it, and we will eventually move to New York as a family. I mean, we'll still have. I have my headquarters here for the cable business. We own the real estate company. I run the school. We have a lot of things here. We have some mortgage businesses. So we'll have a presence here, and I'll be here maybe 25% of my time, 30%. But we see in the next 3-4 years, my kids will never move back. And once they get to New York, they said, Dad, are you kidding? Why would we ever leave New York? So gradually, I follow the kids, so I'll be up there half the time. Roughly, that's what we're figuring. So it's having me move to New York when I'm so invested here in Philadelphia, not moved totally, but partially. It's a reflection, and it's not just a matter of making money, but there's opportunity here to make money, and you can make money, but it depends where you are. Okay.
So what is it a reflection of that you're moving to New York?
What is it a reflection of?
Yep.
Well, first the kids are, the kids. My kids are like dynamite. They're like.
If they wanted to move to Alaska, I don't think you'd move up there.
Do you think Athena would move to Alaska?
Probably not.
No, it's and I guess the big thing I'll tell you guys, when I was raising my kids, there's always this question about how you prioritize your time. And in life, you go through. You've got business. You've got this. You've got a lot of things. And I just thinking, sitting here today, that I always prioritize my kids number one in terms of my time. I do crazy stuff. I went through this horrific divorce, and so I'd be doing stuff like going out to the music lessons at Baldwin School for an hour and a half. So in the middle of the day, you're in the middle of working. 11:30, got to leave. They've got their Suzuki violin lesson at 12, and then the group lesson at 12:30, and then we'd have lunch during them, and then I'd be through at Baldwin at 10 to 1 after there's like a double thing, and I'd be back at the office at 1:15. But you take that break, so I had a chaotic thing with them, and you get back and you say it's really worth being a nut like this, but you look, and Phil knows it from the inside. Because it feels like part of the family. I don't know if you know, it feels like Phil Karp, Phil Balderson, I don't know the difference. His sister Jessie, she's like the best, right? She is. His parents, I gotta tell you, Phil comes from like a super family. I don't know everybody, but I'm sure yours are like his. He's got the best family, the best parents. His mother's a nut, really nice. She's really nice.
That's why the families get along so well.
Yeah. She's fun. She's fun, and his father's awesome. So great family, perfect. They're great family. He's very, very fortunate. But having said that, so I led this chaotic life, but the kids were always number one. And you always said, maybe I shouldn't have done that. I should have done more normal things. And I look back, I have such a great relation with the kids. And you say, so everything we do now, it's always like a family decision. We're going to buy a house of all places. You don't even know. They're going to buy a house in Scottsdale, Arizona. Now, why am I buying a house? It's going to be a house. It's going to be kosher. So we can have Jewish community activities in Scottsdale for the day school, for APEC, for JNF, for the synagogue, for any kind of for the Federation of Phoenix. So we're going to be able to seat 100 people for dinner at the house. We're going to build a new house out there. Why am I doing this, Michigas? In Scottsdale. Why? Because I have a daughter who lives in Scottsdale. And she was going through that rebellion. She didn't know who her identity was. After she graduated from Hebrew high school in 12th grade, she dropped off the face of the Jewish world. And all of a sudden, Phil knows I micromanage stuff with my kids. Is that a good word?
That's true.
Or over micromanage.
It's accurate.
Or total micromanage. Some word like that. So having one of my daughter's boyfriends called me at 4 o'clock this morning. I mean, what's the update in my life? Like in the last 24 hours, 4:10 this morning, get a call from Israel. I've got some issues I want to talk to you about. They're important. I know they're important. I've got a conference call at 11 in the morning. I've got to go to bed. Oh no, but I know you're really important to me. Let's talk now for a little bit. So I said, I know your situation. Athena briefed me on it. I said, here's what I think you got to do. He's got some life-changing decisions, whatever, business and personal, all weave together. And but that's like until about 4:30 in the morning, 4:45. He said, okay, listen, I changed the note to you when I'm going to bed. So, but it's fun. And but even like early this morning, I said, what's most important to me? A little bit of sleep that I miss, or taking care of Raphael.
Well, we know that you're never worried about sleep.
Well,
all right, so let's hear.
What do you want to talk about?
Let's hear a little bit about Michael's career.
What did I do?
Give us a little background about how you first started, and why you were there, what you saw, and what attracted you to it.
So we started out as a student at Penn. It was hard to get a place to live in that was clean. It was mostly boarding houses, so it's right time, right place. And I called my father. I said, Dad, I said, look, why don't we buy a building? I'll live in one floor. We'll rent out the other 2 floors. We'll live for free. The economics worked out approximately that way. And my father was very cautious. No, you can't do that, can't do that. But I scouted for buildings. And when I graduated Penn, then I went to graduate school also. But in between undergraduate and graduate, that summer, I bought a couple buildings. I already scouted what I wanted. I went back to people that owned stuff that I wanted to buy that my father said I couldn't do. My sophomore year, I bought them end of my senior year. Pine Street, 39th and Pine, not the worst location, no. So, well, you pick the blocks you like. So and then it was all preppy block there. But we started buying buildings, and I was in school, and I dropped out of graduate school because it wasn't as much fun as buying buildings. But the numbers worked, and for me, but I was hands-on. I mean, Phil does the same thing I did. Phil's very hands-on. He is on top, hires the individual subs, hires individual people. He can go on the job. He likes to smell it. I mean, Phil's, and that's how we're like doing the same kind of thing. His scale is a little bigger than mine was at the beginning, but I could go on. I did my own demolition work. If the electrician didn't show up, I did the carpentry work. Whatever you got to do, you do what you got to do, right? But
How'd you finance them?
Financing was the hardest thing for me for about 8 or 10 years. I'll tell you, in fact, one of the So how did I finance it at first? I was a nice Jewish kid, and Phil Silverman at Union Federal Savings and Loan in New Jersey, right over the bridge in Camden. He says, "You're a nice Jewish boy." He says, "I know you'll pay the money back." I don't know how. If someone told me about, go to see Phil Silverman at Union Federal, little savings and loan. So Phil would give me 80% LTV. Everybody else was, they wanted to do 70, 75. Phil says, "You're okay. I can go 80 to you because I know you'll pay me back." Then West Philadelphia, the old West Philly Federal Savings and Loan, they gave me 75% LTV. I forget who I dealt with there, but again, they trusted me. They thought I was hardworking. They respected me. The problem was getting the equity money, and the equity money was a bitch. So, I had a certain amount. Initially, I had friends I went to school with that loaned me money. I had a girlfriend she loaned me money. I finally got my parents to put up some money. Well, they didn't pay for my graduate school. That was my deal, actually. I paid the profit I made on that would go for it. So that was how I got.
And we all know how that story ended.
Ended in failure.
Yes.
I told my mother, she says, "You're dropping out of graduate school?" I said, "I'll give you my credits. You can finish the degree, and you'll get the degree." But it was that a little bit of sweat equity and just really micromanaging, do my own repairs. So it's so interesting. I thought you might be interested. Are you guys like numbers crunchers? How many of you guys like numbers? You're not? Okay. So our numbers were, and this was, I just thought of it this morning, our average deal then, our typical deal, we would buy buildings at 4.3 times gross rent. Buying at 4.3 times gross rent, doing my own repairs and my own management, did it myself, or per rent dollar, our operating cost was about 30 cents. Okay, then we had about 10 cents went to debt amortization. Is that right? 30, 40. Yeah, I think that was about the number, and the rest of Phil's. Yeah, I know it was highly profitable. Our unleveraged rate of return was 15%.
Again, the world has changed a lot since.
No, if you do it yourself, Phil. If you don't hire, see, Phil likes to hire. He doesn't put out the garbage himself. He's too proud to do stuff like that. He won't fix a garbage disposal like I would do. Right. He won't go and replace the light switch by himself. That's why his costs are so high. Look at him.
All right. So that's where I guess.
I was going with. I had a girlfriend in Ballackinwood. We're going to her mother's house for dinner one night, and she's living with me, Barbara Brewood. We're going by the Pine Terrace Apartments, 45th and Spruce. The true story just comes to mind. And I said, "Barbara, I have to go in to change a light switch. Someone's light switch didn't work." So I took a light switch, and I just, I used to have little toolboxes in the back of the car. I could fix anything. I said, "You want to come in with me, and I'll show you how I change a light switch." She said, "I'm not going inside." You don't want to? I'm not going inside. Do it yourself. I go and I change the light switch, and I come back in the car, and I took like 6 minutes. I said, "How come you want to come in to see how I change a light switch? Because if I see how to change a light switch, the next time it goes bad, you'll tell me. You know how to do it. Can you do it?"
So I guess that's a good lesson for some of the people.
It's a good lesson, Caitlin. Don't come
in this room that are kind of just starting out about
But I loved it. Yeah, you have to love it. You have to love it. I enjoyed learning. My dad would say to me, "You're putting in a light fixture on a ceiling?" I said, "Sure." I said, "Why not?" He said, "You could trip and fall and break your neck." He said, "That's what you hire people for. Don't take the risk. You hire people. They fix it. They do it. If they break their leg, it's them. It's not." I said, "Dad, I'm not going to break my leg." But
right.
That's the right.
Without a doubt. And then somehow along the way, that your real estate, what became a real estate empire in University City.
Then my grandfather died, left me all his money, and with all that money, I didn't have to work anymore. I haven't worked for 35 years since you know me.
So that kind of, your real estate holdings in University City led you to go into the cable business.
No. Actually, so we had a lot of stuff in University City, and I said to myself, you always have to worry about this thing called the University of Pennsylvania. They can borrow money. I'm paying like 6, they're paying 3. They get, interest-free loans, 3.5, whatever it was. They're dormitories, the dormitory authority at the time. I said, down the road, you never know what competition's going to be. It can put you out of business. Don't be all in one area. So I said, I'd rather take a lower return and start to do suburban stuff. My first building I bought, Wayne Spilloff was the broker, Summit Gardens up on Roxborough, was what year was that? 70, somewhere in the mid-70s. 74, 75, something like that, I bought Summit Gardens. And the return there was going to be, it was a 9% return. I'm used to getting a lot higher at Penn, right? Getting like 30. But I said, look, I said, you've got to learn suburban stuff, and the rents are below market. I bought it because the rents were 10% below market. The one bedrooms, remember the one bedrooms were 185, and I said 185 was below market by 10%. It should have been 205. So you add that up, the return was going to be like 12% or something. If you on equity 13, whatever it was, if you raise the rent. So I knew I had plenty of margin. And I never managed a suburban building. I kept Scully on, Jim Scully, James, big management company for the first couple of years. So I learned from them what they did and how they managed it. And then I said gradually, I thought I could do it myself pretty well. So we took it over. And then we started, and from one deal led to another. But we did want to be diversified. We didn't want to say all my eggs are in the University City basket.
But you did get into cable at some point in there.
Well, yeah, so when...
At some point you got into
cable. At some
cable.
point, so we're 20 years in the business, and it's always, no matter what you do, so you make a good deal, you buy a building, you fill it up, and you get X return, and that's it. No matter what you do, you're capped to what you're going to earn. So I said, gee, wouldn't it be nice to have a retail business and be able to keep growing the company and getting returns that are higher? So we went at the same time, 1985, we had 3 businesses, and we said, let me experiment. So I had a plastics factory in Ohio, in Illinois, that I bought with a friend of mine from college, my close friend Bill. Bill's family had been in the plastic business, so he left that business. We opened a factory. And I had an oil terminal down in West Philly with another friend of mine, National Heat and Power. We had, we were in the Colonial Pipeline. We had the loading, the whole thing. And we were distributors. And then we started the ATX, ATX, the cable business. I said, I'm starting 3 businesses. I said, one of them is going to fail, one of them is going to do very well, and one of them will break even on. And I figured, okay, the one I'm going to do really well on, of course, is going to be the plastic factory, because Bill had many years, the family was a big family in the plastic industry, so I knew that was going to do really well. Whatever. So in the cable business, I said, that's high risk, not cable, it was the telephone, long distance resale was ATX. I said, that's going to fail because that's, more technology, more speculative. So the thing that failed, I got my money back out of the plastics factory. It broke even because we owned the real estate. That's what saved us. We bought the real estate, and so we broke even on that. The National Heat and Power, I guess I probably lost about $1 million on that. We owned the ground, but there were environmental issues. My God, what a nightmare that was. But I learned about trading because we did some trading. That was okay, but the business was complicated. And the ATX turned out to be a very successful business, and from that now we were in the cable business. So we've sort of stayed with that. We had to sell it, and that itself would be a whole long story.
You sold it for a pretty good number, though, right?
On paper, we sold it for a number that was like 90 times earnings. I mean, that's not bad, 90 times. But it's complicated. We never really got 90 times, but that's more of like
a story for another day.
Another day story.
All right, we are running short on time, so
okay.
I just have a couple more questions for you.
Where let me get my notes at?
Today, what's the most exciting thing you're working on today? What excites you the most today about what you see, in the business world, and what you're doing yourself?
Well, of course, I can't compete. I saw yesterday it said that Brian Roberts is king of the world. So that's like, I sent my wife a memo. I said, see, Brian's king of the world. How do you feel now, Chris? No, what's the most exciting thing for me? I mean, I love what we're doing with the cable. We're state of the art on cable. I mean, you're state of the art and you're at the cutting edge of what you're doing. If you orchestrate it right, you'll do well. And we're doing so many really exciting things in the cable industry. Not in this area; it's all in the South.
Give us 3 quick, really exciting things that you're doing in cable.
Okay, like we get a phone call, big developer. I don't want to. Maybe I shouldn't say name. Major national developer. You would know them. Okay. I think it's Williams. Williams, I guess. Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we get a call. They're doing a job down in
Here we go.
A very large southern city, and he says, you know, I'm doing this big job. It's a $600 million job. You know, 600,000 feet of office space, 800,000 feet of commercial, and X number of 500 housing units, 400, whatever it is. But we also have a lot of ground adjoining it. We're going to do a lot of building on in the next couple of years. We went to AT&T, went to Comcast. We won 1 gigabit connection. Google Kansas City is 1 gig. We told people high tech, state of the art. They can't do it. And our consultant said, you're the only one that can do it. Would you want to talk to us because you're down in Florida? Came up, talked to them. He said, yep. He said, I just happen to own a fiber ring in Atlanta, Georgia. It's in Atlanta. And I said, we never lit it up. We have 3,000 units here that we serve. But, you know, yeah, and your property just happens to be right next door to my fiber ring. So how convenient, right? So so I got it really cheaply a number of years ago. That's why I bought that fiber ring. So I knew someday, someday it will be valuable.
So kind of high tech, broadband.
So we're going in there. So what was the deal? So the deal was on the job. So you look at the pro forma. We're getting a certain percentage of the commercial space, and everyone's saying to the company, let's go do it. I said, no. I have to have exclusive ownership of all the conduits for 10 years. So if you go into a job, I said, without that, I won't do it. I'm not going to open up to Atlanta unless I'm the only provider. And I have to own all the conduits or there's no deal. And I said, I won't do it, I'll walk away. And they wanted us, and they wanted the technology, but we have the state-of-the-art technology. And my gamble was, I said, the odds are 2/3 that they'll say yes. 2/3 is pretty good. I'll take the risk on that. And if I lose it, I lose it. I don't care. I get so much business, it doesn't matter. But if I get this, it'll be exciting. And then every job I do with that company, or they invest in subsidiary developers, every job I've set the precedent, okay, and then we did another job, this is in the last year. So this is a major job. Another job that's about maybe a quarter that size in northern Florida, another city, came in, the same thing, and we got the numbers, and my key people are saying it's a great job, and we'll get this percentage of penetration. I said, no. I said, I've got, again, complete control of the conduits. They're mine, or I don't do it. Would you really walk on that? Yep, I'd walk. And you got to have the balls to say, I'll walk, it's okay. And you got to stick to you got to be the numbers person. I said, I'm not going to gamble that AT&T goes in there and they've got such a presence in that region that they get 80% of the business and I get 20%. The numbers worked. I had to get 40% of the numbers, 40, 45. I said, I'm not going to gamble. I'm risk averse. But I know if I have the conduits, I got 100%.
All right,
But then part of it is you got to have your plan. You got to stick with your plan. You got to have alternatives. You got to have a lot of options. And don't do business on a prayer. I hope that this will work out. You got to have a really high calculated risk, and I didn't have a high enough confidence without owning conduits in these 2 big jobs. But now we set a precedent. Any of the jobs you do with this whole family of developers, and they're happy with. They're thrilled with us. They're thrilled with what we're doing because we have good project management. Another good thing when you're doing a job like Steve will tell you, when you have an owner of a big project, he wants to know he's got a team, and you're there. Whenever he wants you there, cooperate 100% with him. Very, very important. Cater to them, nurture them, make them happy. They'll want you to be their vendor forever. Go ahead.
Good. That's kind of a good lesson for us. 5 years from now, what will be the most exciting thing you'll be working on?
Mean with you? I hope to do some deals with you. I really mean it. He's the best. Phil is the best. I love him. I trust him. He's hardworking. He's brilliant. I'm hoping to gradually invest in people instead of doing my own stuff. And Phil's one person I would love to invest in. So that's one thing. But 5 years, what's the most exciting thing? The most exciting thing would be the Jewish charity stuff. That's truly, but we're gearing up to do that. I'm gearing up with my kids. Like we're talking, Justine, one of my daughters, I think will leave the private sector and be working full-time in Jewish charity. We'd like to be involved in day schools. We'd like to be involved in, I'm meeting with the Alexander Muss School in Israel, is where kids from here go for a semester in high school for education. I'm meeting with Mr. Muss in Florida in a couple of weeks, and we're looking to have some affiliation with them. But so the two issues are, how do you have Jewish continuity, Lador Vador, is a major, major concern to us, and Israel is a major concern to us. So how do you have that Jewish people be strong, maintain their religion? How do you have people understand to both bring them to be part of the Jewish community and to also understand the role of religion? My daughter, since she was 9 years old, can conduct an entire service. Friday night service at 9, Saturday morning at 10. I had an investment banker came to see me yesterday, had dinner at the house Monday night. And we're sitting in the living room, and I said, Andy, I said, I said, by the way, so Talia, your version of Odim on Nafnu Law. It's one of the prayers, if you know the service at all. And Andy's memorized the entire service. So she's 16. She memorized when she was like 12. And it was really fun that prayer after prayer, I said, show Talia, because Talia, she grew up fairly religious. She went to the joint program at the Jewish Theological Seminary, Columbia, Barnard. She went to Barnard. So she knows this stuff. But Andy, knowing the whole prayer after prayer just by heart, she didn't have a prayer book with her, and she knows that she does Israeli songs. She's going to sing at APEC one song this year, but she's 16. I'm glad she's got that thing. But having the kids, he knows my excitement to, Andy's going to sing down at the APEC Policy Conference. By the way, any of you going to the APEC Policy Conference this year? Who's going? You're going? Nobody else is going to APEC? There's no more important organization than APEC. APEC is Israel's lifeline. We need the American support for Israel to survive and to thrive. APEC does that. They recruit college kids, Jewish and non-Jewish. We say that if you're a Christian and you support Israel, thank you, we love you, we welcome you, and we need you. And we want to reach out to everybody to help us, because to me, that's a whole long story. But anyway, APEC, I cannot tell you how excited I am to go. I'm going to have 3 of my kids will be at APEC. And one of my kids lives in Israel. She said, I don't have to go to APEC, Dad, I live it. She brings people over. She brought 4 investment bankers this week to her place to go on a tour of Israel. So she's running her own APEC program.
I think I speak for everybody here in saying that whatever we can do to get your efforts and your resources to help the Philadelphia school system in whatever way possible, we'll do it.
I run a school. I've got 760.
We need your help.
We have 700.
In addition to your current schools. We're just running a little short on time.
But let me give you one last thing. Since you can ask, the most important thing, we talk about poverty. We talk about breaking poverty. We talk about... Then I'll stop. No, we talk about how to improve education for poor kids, and we talk about how to break poverty. So I run a charter school. I have 760 kids. Very, very priority. It was the 4th worst school in the city when I took it over. We're excited about what we're doing a great job with the kids. But the big gap that's missing in our society, we're already spending the money. We don't need to spend more money. The problem is we don't integrate social services in education. This is a critically missing problem. The Department of Human Services in Philadelphia is totally flawed. It will never work. We have to have the schools have to provide the social work. The way we do foster care is a total failure. I cannot tell you how many kids suffer every day. It's disgusting, it's gross, it's vile. The politicians don't give a shit. And that's true. That's true. On that note. No. It's really a problem. But if we integrate social services in education and we hold parents accountable, remember, your kids do well because you as parents educate them, nurture them, have high expectation. The family is key. Where the family isn't key, we have to integrate under the umbrella of the school, the social services. It's going to be breathtaking, the difference we can make in kids' lives if we do that. That's our big missing piece. And the money we're spending, just badly.
All right, let's hear from Steve. Let's hear from Steve.
You want me up?
Yes, please.
You know why Michael is fabulously more successful and wealthier than I am. I just have to show you something. Hold up this watch and this watch, okay?
I bought this new.
So much makes him remarkable, but I learned something that I didn't know. He's a handy Jew. I mean, how rare is that? He can do light switches and garbage disposal. Is a very rare thing.
All right, so let's, Stephen, I think, just like Michael.
Oh, no, it's my microphone now.
Let's-
No, I'm sorry. You've lost all control.
Let's hear about
There's
how you
no
got
control
started,
over
and if
any
you
of
wanna
this.
Just, give us whatever it is. But we like to hear
Give you
about
whatever?
We like to hear about how you got started.
We're
in
gonna have
real
like a
estate
conversation.
And what was
So-
excited to you in your career.
In all seriousness, what makes the real estate world really interesting is that all three of us are in the same world. Real estate's a quarter of the economy, give or take. It's where people live, shop, work, and play. Actually, company Marcus and Millichap counts actually 22 categories of real estate, everything from hotels and student housing to mini storage. So, it affects everybody's life, as Menachem said, which was very notable to what you said. But when you are in the real estate brokerage world, you are a service provider. So we tend to touch all of those parts of where people live, shop, work, and play. And what we do at Metro Commercial is pretty narrow. We do retail real estate. We do stores. We do restaurants. Center City, we say we're ground floor guys. Part of that is you get asked a lot of questions by people. And we get routinely the same question all the time. First question is, hey, what's going in there? Okay, because we usually know, hey, what's going in there? Then the next question we get asked all the time is, do you know what we need in our fill in the blank, our neighborhood, in our shopping center? Because everybody, has real embedded interest in what goes on in their neighborhood and has great ideas. Third question we get asked all the time is, why can't we be more like New York? Which I think goes to, I think Laura left, but goes to next emerging neighborhoods and a lot of the things that Michael was saying. And I think that also goes to Philadelphia. We have to get out of the why can't we be like New York mentality because we do have a lot of good things going on here. But what we do is we lease and sell commercial properties. We also find locations for retailers that are looking for locations. We manage properties and we also do some development. So we become the Chamber of Commerce a lot. We become the people that have to a retailer that says, do I spend my expansion capital and resources and time and effort in Philadelphia, or do I go to Scottsdale, or do I go to Boca, or do I go to other markets? So even though we do a lot of our work regionally, and we do have a big national presence with some of our clients, we have to know what's going on in the country, because you could be Target or you could be some retailer, and it's a big country. We say that a lot, and they have a lot of choices as far as where they go and they do things. So I've stood at the corner of Broad and Chestnut with a client who has never been to Philadelphia, or I've picked them up at 30th Street Station or at the airport, and very often, as the person that runs the company, I kind of bungee in with the other people and at our company, and it'll often be, hey, if what do you know about Philadelphia? And they'll say, well, I dated a girl that went to Penn, or I used to hang out here, or I know nothing about it. And it gives us a great opportunity to look at our hometown with a clean sheet of paper like an outsider does. Because our goal is get them to spend those expansion dollars here, not in Scottsdale, not in Boca, not in other places, because that doesn't do us any good. So we get to see through the eyes of outsiders as far as how they look at Philly. Commercial real estate, which we're in that narrow bandwidth of retail, is office, which we're in, office buildings here in the Penn Centers. These were the first post-war office buildings built in Philadelphia. And we have to know what goes on with who works in these places, because the people that work here shop on Chestnut and Walnut. They live in the outer ring. the emerging outer ring around Center City, where there's really not a lot of services, and you can go around Center City. What's happened, what came out of the last recession has really been good. What we would call greater Center City and beyond, as Michael said, you know, South Street was the southern border, the northern border was maybe Vine, Spring Garden, if that. And you can go around Center City like a clock and see the emerging areas, you know, basically going all the way up in I-95, up North Broad, up through Brewery Town and around through the southern side of South Philly, basically all the way down to Tasker, to the stadiums at this point. So we have to pay attention. People that develop residential have to pay attention to where people work. People that develop retail properties have to pay attention to where people live. They have to pay attention to where people conduct business. How I got started in all of this. This is all I've ever done for 27 years. I was a junior in GW with Mike Goldberg back there, and needed a part-time job, and always had an interest in architecture. And in the mid-'80s, Donald Trump didn't have a TV show telling us what real estate was. So to me, architecture and real estate were like the same thing. I needed a part-time job, and I got out of the Washington Business Journal book of lists, real estate companies. And at the time, what was then Coldwell Banker Commercial, which is now CBRE, had an office about a half block from the GW campus. I went to the lobby, picked up the payphone, which, you know, payphones, and called, convinced them to have me come up, got a part-time job at what was then and is still the largest commercial real estate company, worked about 15, 20 hours a week, was making about $500 as a junior in college with a lot of pocket money to spend. It was a great year. And then it was off to the races, came back to Philadelphia and started a career here, originally leasing office buildings, but eventually, because they were the big things, I didn't want to be doing industrial properties in South Jersey, or retail was always kind of the bastard stepchild in commercial real estate. Office and industrial, and I wanted to be where the big buildings were. Liberty Place groundbreaking occurred my first day in real estate, and I wanted to lease office buildings in Center City. I eventually morphed into doing retail, which I felt was more real estate. And the things that make people make those decisions about retail, it's very different than office. It's hard to believe we're even in the same industry. Residential real estate. I see Barbara Corns in the back from the Temple University Real Estate Institute, a great friend of ours. I'll give her a shout out. She works on all of our continuing ed for Metro Commercial. But we all have that same blue certificate when you're in the real estate industry, but you could sell cemetery plots, you could sell King of Prussia Mall. It's the same blue certificate that we all carry around. There's no distinction. But retail, the things that make people make decisions as far as where they locate their business are very different than the other parts of commercial real estate. So that's what's really very interesting about it. And in Philadelphia, we forget, second largest city on the East Coast, and we compete really well. New York, it's like soccer. They're on that Tokyo, Paris, London league. Philly's on like the Atlanta, Miami, Boston, Chicago league. We shouldn't apologize for that.
So how do you think, what is attractive to retailers, and how do you think we can be more attractive? And kind of in that same vein, where do you think, Philadelphia is going as becoming are we becoming more of a retail hub, or are we becoming less of a retail hub?
We could all go on for hours about this. And if you think about, Philadelphia, we have Center City, then we have the city, if you think of it as a sideways T. Northeast Philadelphia, north of Cottman Avenue, is 600,000 people living from Cottman Avenue to Ben Salem, or to Neshaminy. Center City, depending whose numbers you use, 215,000, includes University City, people that say they live here that don't, people that don't say they live here that do. And then the region. And people look at the region, they look at the city. If you go down to South Philadelphia and you look at the shopping centers along Delaware Avenue, along Oregon Avenue, basically Washington Avenue, they're fully leased. They're hugely successful. And I'm not just saying the more ethnic ones along Washington Avenue, which are pretty much fully leased, very interesting. Very healthy market there. Demand outstrips supply. Center City, There are exactly, everyone focuses on Walnut, Walnut, Walnut. You know, this is the king of Prussia here. Center City, Walnut Street has exactly 100 storefronts from Broad Street to Rittenhouse Square. Basically fully leased. There might be 1 or 2 vacancies, but it's because of a landlord that's a holdout for a high rent, or maybe the tenant was paying rent and they vacated. The challenges that we have in Center City are, is a lot of it is physical. You know, this is an old city. William Penn laid it out. He set up property lots that are very narrow, 16 foot, 21 feet. It's not appealing, so there's a lot of physical issues to the real estate. There's not a lot of parking, and people are like, well, Center City, you want parking? So a lot of it is our geography doesn't grow beyond those 4 blocks of Walnut and those 4 blocks of Chestnut, and, you know, what will happen. You know, it's always this is the other thing. This isn't the question that's posed to us. They should do something about that. They should do something about Market East. And then I'm always like, who's the they? You know, they, you know.
Well, that's you.
You know, well, and that's one of the challenges of urban retail is you have lots of different owners. And lots of different owners don't all have the same agenda. I could own a property, Phil could own a property, and Michael could own a property all next to each other, and we could all put in sneaker stores because we don't care about the tenant mix. Some of you might remember what went on out in Manayunk when Dan Edison accumulated, you know, several dozen properties. He was able to create a tenant mix in a streetscape, which is rare. It doesn't happen that much. But that's the fabric of a city, and that's what makes cities fun and interesting. So, you know, will we start to see more retail in some of our emerging outer rings around Center City? You're seeing it now. And usually the first thing that comes into these areas are restaurants. And if you go back to old guys like Michael and I, you know, back when South Street boomed and Society Hill boomed, there were restaurants that came first. And they were the first things that got us outsiders to discover those areas. Northern Liberties is a great example. There's only a couple thousand people that live in Northern Liberties, but it's the restaurants that got people maybe from Center City to go there and discover it. So that's what you're now seeing in Fishtown. It's a great example where, you know, people in Fishtown aren't the ones patronizing those restaurants, it's people coming in. And then what happens after that? After restaurants, then come maybe some small merchants. And then maybe come national retailers, and everybody laments, oh no, national retailers, they ruin the neighborhood. But the developers like it because they pay good rent and they have good credit. So
Yeah, sure. I guess throughout your career, I mean, you know, if there was anything you could have changed, what would it be? And, you know, what do you think are the most important lessons that you've learned throughout that kind of whole process? And
well, it's not over yet.
What would you? It's not over. But
it's something I often tell you.
You just dated yourself, although you look very young. You've been doing it a long time.
Yeah, I started when I was 12. Is one, be patient. It becomes your time. People die, people retire, and if you're in what I am, which is a service business, that it does become your time. I will say there is a little ageism. You know, people do want, you know, people that have energy and enthusiasm, and so it's certainly good to be young in certain businesses. You want your doctor and your lawyer to be wise, you know, but let them be in their 60s and have experience. But you know, people want young, energetic, progressive thinking people, and that's one of the things that we all have to not struggle but pay attention to. Is you have to pay attention to what 25 to 30-year-olds are doing in this city. I mean, we talk about how people are deciding to raise their family here. Will people want to live in the McMansion past Exton? If you're 25 now and you can afford to, and you know, is that a dead thing? I mean, is that why Toll Brothers is saying we want to build in cities, and look at where they're investing their capital? Their national firm happens to be based in this region, but just look at where they're spending their capital on places like Naval Square, on Head House. You know, do people want to live in the 5,000-foot stucco McMansion 40 miles from here? Goes back to schools. We just brought this whole conversation full circle. How are you going to raise your kids? Well, look at what happened to the public elementary schools in Center City, how they've gotten better because more people are staying in. They're not where they should be. There aren't enough of them. And then come after elementary school, everyone's still blowing out to the burbs. If they can't afford it. So, you know, I think that, you know, the most important lesson that you can learn is to be patient. It becomes your time. And you know, I don't know what, you know, career-wise, it's where I'm fortunate. I'm doing what I love. If somebody had told me in college this was a career that existed, I'd say it sounds too good to be true. I don't believe it. We are looking to hire if anybody's interested or knows people. So I always want to get that out there too.
Adam will give you $2,000 for any.
I might take that job Adam's offering. It didn't sound bad.
Thank you.
Yep.
Stephen, thank you.